Hello? Hey, Lena. It said BOT something or other. I got a missed call Lionel Fuentes in my email right before it, and then
It's for the TAC meeting. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. can change the name of it. Yeah, that's what they told me, and I just went in and changed, added my name where it says in-person member. Click on that. Change the name if you want. Sure. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. You can just type your name into the computer, and that way it'll show who you are for those that are in person today. Yep, I'm in my office.
All right. What the law? Yeah.
We're for the TAC meeting, this is the right place.
Yes, this is it. Good.
Mike, you can anywhere and type your name in to the laptop. And did you see my email earlier about running the show today?
No? No? Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, yeah. that mean?
I was like, does it matter where I sit?
No.
Good to know. So you just argue like,
You know, everybody got their territory.
I know. Like everybody only moves like. How are you?
Pretty good, I mean.
Thanks.
Going on left. Down there. Jeff went.
So it looks like we're just waiting on Anna right now for the quorum, so we'll give her a couple more minutes.
Hey everyone, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, great. Hey Mike, did you get my email? So you're going to chair the meeting?
Yeah, I was just looking at it right now. That's fine.
Okay. I mean, if you want me to say a few words to open as to why I had to make the last minute change, I'll be happy to.
I mean, unless you want to, I don't think we need to.
Okay.
all right. You can type in your name instead of it saying in person for those Gina and Anna that just joined. But we now have our quorum. Thank you everybody for coming and helping us out with the in-person quorum. I'm, as you can see, sitting in the back in my office. But I think we can go ahead and get started. So I don't know, Jeff, if you want to start and let Mike take over.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So this is Jeff Sims. I guess we're opening the 2021 first edition of the Fiscal Advisory Committee meeting. As you probably can see, I am having to come on virtual. I had a COVID exposure issue. I was planning to be there in person, but I had to make a last minute change. So Michelle Jenkins will be pinch hitting for me as far as actively being part of the quorum. So she'll be the one voting on EPC's behalf, but I will still be here to offer any input or answer questions or anything like that. So since we had to make this change and Michelle has to act as the EPC official voter person today, Mike is going to have to chair the meeting. So I guess with that, we'll go forward and I'll hand it over to Mike to start the chairing.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. And maybe Sarah, can you make the agenda maybe a little bit bigger on my screen? Let me see. So as she's doing that, we call the order. First item on the agenda is public comment. There's no one in the room to speak to public comment, but Sarah, I don't know if you know, is there anybody online who wishes to speak to public comment?
I have not seen anything in the chat. Let me check. Nope, just let me see. unmute. Oh, apparently Chris Vella is here for public comment.
Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Hey, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Chris Vella, and I live in 33605. In your agenda today, you're going to be presented under status report an update for the North Downtown Grid multimodal improvements. I think this is a very significant and positive discussion moving forward. As you know, we had a very intense study in the city of Tampa a couple of years back called Envision. And in Envision, we tried to look at road barriers that prevented any type of safety issues and access to properties in other ways than just cars. This is extremely important now because the city of Tampa actually purchased some parcels right around this area. In fact, on Tampa Street, right where the old Army Navy surplus store, the parking lot, and right next to the Scott Street exit, all of those have, I believe, have been purchased by the city of Tampa. And so why is that so important is that now that we have city-owned land next to these barriers, we now have an opportunity, if we remove those barriers, Jane Castor could easily mandate affordable housing and business spaces on that corridor. So you could have access, public walking access or biking access or any type of access to now occupy that space. We're talking at minimum 3 acres of urban land, but if you remove these old ramps, that could be 3 or 4 times larger. So we're actually contributing more to the downtown development. And this is also important, I think, because I don't know if someone's talking, but someone can talk. Can you put yourself on mute? Okay. So, and I'll wrap this up, but I think this is a tremendous opportunity. I think FDOT can get into a good partnership with the city over this. I think this is a way to lease properties to the city that are instead of parking lots and lots for trailers, which we have been doing for decades. This could be an opportunity for FDOT to go in an indefinite lease with the city on the land where the exit ramps are on for permanent development. So they can still get a cut from this, but from their PR standpoint, they can say, look what we're doing now. We're not leasing land to park cars anymore or maintenance buildings and so forth. We are now leasing land for development, land that we hogged up for interstate exits that are very, very low. In fact, these 2 ramps are way in just and below 10,000. It's probably even less than that because of COVID. So just take this in consideration. Please take this report seriously. Again, I think there's a lot of opportunities to come out of it. Thank you.
Anything else with public comment today? Sarah, do you see any others?
I'm not seeing any other comments.
Okay. We'll give it just a second. If there is anybody, please speak now. Okay, I think let's move on to the next item. Next item is approval minutes from the November meeting. Does everyone have a chance to review the minutes? And if so, can we have a motion?
This is Jay Collins, motion to approve the November minutes.
And Danny seconded. With a motion by Jerry to approve and a second by Danny. Any discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move on to the action items. The first one is election of officers. I guess, Sarah, you will run that?
Yes. So I included this in your packet. As you know, our current chair is Jeff, with Mike as our vice chair, and then Tony Garcia as our alternate. So this is your opportunity to elect officers. You can, there are no term limits, so officers can be re-elected year to year. So this is your opportunity to do that. So do we have any anybody motions for or nominations for our chair?
I'd like to nominate Jeff, the chair again.
And I'll second that if it needs a second.
All right. Do we have any other nominations? All right. Hearing none, we can vote on the chair.
Is Jeff willing to accept it?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah, yes, I am. I was going to say, you know, I'm happy to continue in this role. I've done it for a couple years, but I'm also open if somebody really had a desire to chair it. I would certainly be willing to forego it. But if you know, if I'm the only nominee, I'm certainly willing to continue forward.
Okay. All right. Sarah, you want to take a vote?
All right. With that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? All right, seeing none, congratulations, Jeff. You will be our chair for another year. So like I said, Mike is our vice chair and has been helpful through some of these meetings lately, taking over for Jeff as we sort of work through these new times. Do we have any nominations for our vice chair?
This is Jay Gons. I'd like to nominate Mike for vice chair.
All right.
Yeah, I'll second that.
And is that all right with you, Mike?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations, Mike. You're our vice chair again. So then our last position is our alternate. And like I said, Tony Garcia has filled this role for the last year. Do we have any nominations for this role?
I will nominate Jay.
All right. And Jay, are you okay with that?
Sure.
All right. Are there any other nominations?
We need a second for that one.
I seconded.
Danny gave a second.
Okay. All right. With that, are there any other nominations? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And Jay will be our alternate for this year.
Okay, so back to the agenda. The next item is attendance review. Sarah, that's your
All right. This was also included as part of your packet. I included the updated attendance sheet. We did have some new people join midway through, so I included their names in that as well. So really, this is at the purview of the committee, what they want to do with this attendance record, if there's any seats to be vacated or not, or leave it as is based on the 2020 attendance records. So with that, are there any comments or questions from the committee?
any questions, anyone, or comments?
And I can.
I don't see any in the room, Sarah.
And I do not see anything in the chat.
So do we need a motion then to, what would that be, just keep it the same as we move in the next year?
Yeah, Sarah, would it should be a motion to accept membership as is?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to follow the chat as well. Sorry. Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Does Jake Hollins make a motion to accept membership as is?
Okay, we have a motion by Jay and a second by Danny. Any other discussion before we vote? None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Next item is safety performance targets, and that is going to be Johnny Wong.
All right. Johnny, do you want me to give you permission for the slides or thumb through them myself?
If you already have it loaded, I'll just tell you to click through if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right, good afternoon, TAC. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm here for our annual safety performance target setting process. Next slide, please. I'll establish a little bit of context for any new members that we have on this committee. The safety performance measures originate from MAP 21 legislation. That legislation requires us to track performance for 5 safety measures and set targets for the upcoming calendar year, meaning 2021. The federal reporting requirements are that the measures and targets have to be calculated using a 5-year rolling average, and the final year of that 5-year period ends in the year prior to the year we're setting targets for. So we're setting targets for 2021, and we're looking at data that spans from 2016 through 2020. In addition to these 5 prescribed measures that you see on the screen, our board has in the past voted to track 2 additional measures per year, and they are the year-end fatality total and also motorcycle fatalities. Next slide, please. The MAP 21 legislation requires that both state DOTs and MPOs report performance and set targets each year. This is the 5th year that we've been doing this, so many of you are pretty familiar with the process already. For the previous 4 years, FDOT has set its state targets at 0, but this past April, the Federal Highway Administration determined that the state has not made significant progress toward achieving that goal. And I believe that FDOT and the feds are working in consultation with one another to help the department establish more appropriate targets. But as of this morning, in fact, those new targets haven't been finalized. So whereas we usually allow the state to take the lead, and then we as an MPO have 180 days to create our targets, this year we're taking the lead, and this is a first for all of us. We have up until February 26th to establish our targets, and from that date forward, when they're set, each time that we adopt our TIP or amend the LRTP or amend the TIP, those new targets will have to appear in the documents. And at a future date that has yet to be determined, FDOT will review our targets, and the Federal Highway Administration will review the department's targets to determine whether or not we're making progress toward achieving them. Next slide, please. As I mentioned already, this is the 4th year that we'll be forecasting, or sorry, this is the 5th year, my mistake. This is the 5th year that we're going to be forecasting safety performance and setting the targets. But this is probably the first year that I and my team are feeling less than confident about our ability to predict the future. Last January, we went through the same process. We forecasted what we thought was going to occur throughout 2020, and then our assumptions of normalcy and what would occur got turned on their head. Of course, this past year, the big story was the pandemic and its impact on travel behavior. What we saw throughout 2020 from about early spring through the end of the year was that our traffic volumes dropped by between 10 and 20%. That fluctuated on a monthly basis. In the early days of COVID, we saw a very marginal decline, and then as the summer went into the fall, we saw a pretty significant drop of anywhere between 10 to 20%. And as we're wrapping up 2020 in December, I think we were only down by 8% compared to the previous year. So despite the impact of the pandemic on travel behavior, our planning efforts didn't stop. This past year, our planning work continued, and we were able to produce a couple pretty important studies related to our safety issues. We produced studies on several corridors listed on the top 20 high injury network, and those are available on our website. Those were pretty specific recommendations coming out of those because they focused on corridors. But in addition to those very specific corridors or the very specific challenges facing each one of those corridors, we also worked on a more general action plan that focused on speed management strategies across the entire county, and that Vision Zero Speed Management Action Plan is also available on the website. And the last important news that I want to report from 2020 is that the Independent Oversight Committee held its first public hearing in October, and during that hearing, it certified the 2021 project plans for all agencies. And well, despite approving or certifying those project plans, the litigation about the validity of the surtax is still up in the air. I'm not certain when we should expect a ruling from the Supreme Court, but it's going on 2 years now, so we're not predicting that'll be resolved anytime soon. Next slide, please. Before we reveal what our projections will be for this coming calendar year, we'll take a moment to just review our methodology for forecasting performance and targets. This methodology has been detailed to the federal reviewers on several occasions, and it's been nominated by the FHWA to be a best practice. We've also shared this methodology with other MPOs around the state and nation, some of whom have copied our methodology because they're confident in our ability to project what crashes will be. So needless to say, we're pretty proud of the work that we've done. In general, this work or the methodology originates from the work that we did leading up to the adoption of the 2045 long-range plan. Those needs assessments are where we refined the methodology and got it to a point where we really believe in its ability to forecast outlooks for the future. Next slide, please. Again, it's a pretty detailed, oh, you can go back one slide, sorry. I was gonna say that in general, the methodology is pretty detailed, but to just kind of give an overview, we produce our safety targets each year by projecting the number of crashes that we'll have by year's end. We do a pretty basic linear projection using anywhere between 5 to 10 years of crash data. And then we subtract the crash reduction benefits that we calculated from our 2045 LRTP update. In that update, we estimated what our revenue would be, we estimated what percentage of our transportation revenue would be invested in safety projects. And based on the level of investment, we estimate what the impact would be on our crash rate. And so given the amount of money that we know is available to us in 2021, we predict that we'll see about a 1% decrease in all crashes. And that's just based on the current investment level. Of course, if the Supreme Court, if the Florida Supreme Court approves the surtax and releases those funds for programming, in the future, once those programs are running, we would expect anywhere from 2 to 3% reduction on an annual basis, and possibly far more than that. Next slide. So to transition, the assumption that the surtax funds will not be released in time to program projects for calendar year 2021 is the first assumption that we had to make. We are less than 100% confident in our projections this year because of so many unknowns, right? But we predict that because we have yet to see a final ruling for the Supreme Court, that it's not an urgent matter to them and that they're not in a rush to release those funds. The second assumption that we made is that traffic volumes across all of 2020 we're down by about 10% on average, and that because the Florida Economic Forecast predicts that our state's economic recovery will occur a little bit faster than some other states, we're assuming that our volumes will rebound nearly to pre-COVID volumes by the end of 2021. Next slide, please. All right, so with all those assumptions in mind, here are our performance predictions for 2021. What you see on the slide now is one of our discretionary targets that was requested by the board. It is the year-end fatality total, meaning that it's not a 5-year average. This is actual numbers. We ended 2020 with approximately 192 fatalities, and we estimate that we'll perform even better in 2021 and end at 190. One of the reasons why, well, there's really two main reasons why we predict that this number will drop significantly. One is that the reduced traffic volumes we believe will lead to fewer crashes, and fewer of those crashes being of high severity. The second is that in 2019, we saw a pretty abnormal jump in our number of fatalities. We attribute that mostly to motorcycle fatalities because 2019 there were a record high number of sport bike registrations. There was a fairly high number of motorcycle licenses being issued, and we suspected that that was due to folks using motorcycles as like recreational vehicles rather than a primary personal vehicle. And with the economic decline that we saw in 2020 and continuing through 2021, we don't believe that we'll see that high number of motorcycle fatalities moving forward. Next slide, please. The second target is required by Federal Highway Administration. This is not one of the discretionary targets. It is fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. And based on the methodology that we've already described for calculating this, we're predicting that by the end of 2021, we will have a 5-year average of 195 fatalities. And so our target would be to not exceed 195. Next slide, please. Another discretionary target is the motorcycle fatalities. Our board requested that this be calculated on a 5-year rolling average, and we're predicting that we'll see a significant drop by the end of 2021. We already explained why we foresee this to happen. 2019 was probably an abnormal year because of the record number of motorcycles, which resulted in severe crashes and fatalities, but 2020, we dropped that number by more than half. So in 2019, we had 53 motorcycle fatalities. This past year, we had 25. And we would expect that trend to continue until the economy recovers completely. Next slide, please. Our fourth target is average serious injuries over 5 years. With that 1% reduction, we're projecting to not exceed 1,201 serious injuries. Next slide, please. The next target is non-motorized, meaning bike and ped fatalities and serious injuries combined. This is, again, a 5-year rolling average. Last year, we established a target of 222. We missed that target by quite a bit. We attribute that failure to achieve the target because of all the cyclists and pedestrians that we saw, especially in the spring and summer of this past year. When folks were on lockdown, they weren't driving to work. We saw a dramatic decrease of traffic volumes. Folks were getting out on their bikes and walking around, and with so many cyclists and pedestrians kind of hitting the network, some of them for the very first time, it created a little bit of an unsafe situation. So we had an abnormally high year for fatalities and injuries for active modes this past year. We're expecting that we'll see about the same amount by the end of 2021. So our target is to not exceed 230. Next slide, please. The next target is our fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. We're predicting that by year's end, our 5-year rolling average will be 1.38. Again, we had a number of fatalities, and it was pretty consistent with the rate per VMT. So despite the we saw a decrease in fatalities in 2020. We also saw a precipitous drop in volume, and so we're just kind of keeping pace. Next slide, please. And lastly, we're expecting our serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled to continue to decrease. We've seen this decrease significantly on a yearly basis for about the past 10 years. And 2020 was no different. We basically kept pace with our injury rate per VMT. So by the end of 2021, we're projecting that our 5-year rolling average will not exceed 8.49. Next slide, please. Here's a report card for what we saw at the end of 2020. In the beginning of 2020, when we brought this to you to establish the targets, we set a target not to exceed 209 fatalities. This past year, we met that target. We ended up with 192. We set a target to not exceed 204 fatalities as a 5-year rolling average, and we just barely squeaked by. We had 202. We nailed our serious injury target on the dot exactly. We set that to be 1255, and we ended with 1255. We exceeded our motorcycle fatality target. We set it to be 44.5, and we came in at 40.2. We did not meet our bike and ped fatalities and injuries. We set that to be 222, and we, failed that pretty bad. In fact, we had, again, a number of cyclists and pedestrian injuries this past year, kind of an abnormal year, but to be expected with the number of walkers and cyclists on the road. So we ended with 229. We also did not meet our fatality rate per VMT. We set that to be 1.41, and we came in at 1.45. So within striking range of achieving that this coming year, but we missed it by just a little bit. And lastly, our serious injury rate per VMT, we predicted that we would come in at under 8.7, and we ended up with a 9. I will say that there's a little bit of uncertainty in predicting the rates because we had to establish a new methodology to estimate what the vehicle miles traveled were. We looked at 16 count stations maintained by DOT, and we also looked at gas revenue collected in the first 9 months of this year and compared it to 2019. So we did our best to estimate what the vehicle miles traveled were, but without having a verified source, we can't really say for sure. Next slide, please. All right, and so what we're proposing to you all is to approve the calendar year 2021 safety targets based on the methodology that is already enshrined in the 2045 LRTP. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all have.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions from the committee? Johnny, can you go back to the 5-year motorcycle crash? Yes, the graph. It seemed like the graph didn't match what you were showing on the table.
Mike, we talking about motorcycles?
That one, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see. The target. So the target for 2021 is just extrapolated from 44.8 and 40.2. Is that right?
Right. So by the end of 2021, we'll have 5 years worth of data, which will be beginning of 2017 through 21. And all years except for 2019 were pretty low. 2019, within that 5-year time frame, the lone exception to it being a pretty low year for motorcycle fatalities was 2019. 53 was just really abnormal. I mean, we've kind of hypothesized why we think that that's the case. We suspect that 35 is probably closer to what we should expect on a yearly basis.
Okay, so we've never been close to 35. Every year it's been at least 40. I just wonder if that's
right.
Really Joel,
You actually, oh, sorry to interrupt. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I wasn't able to show motorcycle fatalities prior to, 2011 on here. But as we were kind of coming out of the recession from 2007 to 2009, motorcycle fatalities were pretty low then. I can't say for certain because I'm not an expert in macroeconomic forecasting, but I would expect that with our economic recovery, we're going to continue to hover around 35 for the next few years until people have that discretionary income to where they feel like, hey, I want to go out and try riding my motorcycle again. Again, that's just my assumption. Could be right, could be wrong, but.
okay, all right, thank you, Johnny. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, can we have a motion to accept the report? Jonathan Scott, motion to approve. We got a motion from Jonathan, do we have a second? Second from Danny. The motion from Jonathan, second from Danny. Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, nobody's opposed.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, John. I believe the next item on the agenda was the TIP amendments. I don't recall who was speaking to this one, Sarah, but next item.
Yeah, Vishaka will be presenting this.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon all. I hope you can hear me. This is Vishaka Shivaraman, MPO staff. And today I'm going to be presenting to the TIP amendment for intersection improvements along Fowler Avenue to you all. Sarah, can you please advance to the next slide? So just to give you an update about what this amendment for this month is that FDOT had requested this amendment to the MPO, asking us for a project to construct pedestrian bicycle safety improvements along Fowler Avenue. The intersections identified are the following: Nebraska Avenue, 15th Street, 22nd Street, Bruce B. Downs, and 56th Street. If you might remember that this TIP amendment came based on the FDOT's recent study for the University Area Multimodal Feasibility Study for the potential safety improvements. FDOT identified crashes along the Fowler Avenue at various intersections, and these were identified as the high crash locations and potential bicycle and pedestrian crashes. So based on that, they identified these 5 intersections for construction. The project constructed based on a design build technology. So that will help to expedite the process. Next slide, please. Just to give you an update, most of the improvements are similar, and the identified improvements in general would be to tightening the curb radii at the corners. Some of the intersections would help to reduce the pedestrian crossing distances and also gives more pedestrian crossing opportunities. Thus, it promotes lower vehicle speeds and reduces the exposure for the bicyclists and the pedestrians. It also helps to accommodate the planned HART BRT improvements along the corridor in the future. Like I mentioned before, this contract helps to construct faster, and it involves innovative intersection designs wherever possible. Next slide, please. So just to give you an update, this was in your packet as well, but I would just like to show you where the locations are identified along the Fowler Avenue. As you can see, it goes all the way from 56th Street, Bruce B. Downs, 22nd, 15th, and then Nebraska Avenue. So these are the 5 locations. Next slide, please. Again, I believe you have seen this presentation in the past by FDOT. So I would just like to quickly show you the existing and the proposed designs. Sarah, can you just quickly advance to the next slide, please? The Fowler at 15th is also has some improvements. If you can see on the top northwest, the curb radii have been shortened, and also along the southeast corner, the curb radii have been shortened, and the intersection has been brought closer. Next slide. Again, at this one, there are improved crossings, and the median has also been, the nose has been changed and installed. There's been a pedestrian detectors installed. Next slide, please. At Bruce B. Downs Avenue, similarly, the pavements have been marked well. The intersection has been narrowed and brought closer, reducing the pedestrian crossing distances. And then the new light poles are also used at this intersection. This is, again, you can see some of the potential concepts on the proposed design diagram to the right. Next slide, please. Similarly, at 56th Street, the curb, the intersection has been reduced, the crossing distances are reduced, and the nose has been brought closer. The nose has been reconstructed to, and the intersection has been brought closer. The existing sidewalks are removed at some of the places, and it also involves new LED light poles installed at the intersection. Next slide, please. This slide helps you to understand what is the cost involved. As you can see, it's an amendment project, and it is brought up to the committees this month. The intersection improvement, the potential funds to be added are all for 2021, as they are construction funds, and the fund codes are given as above: DIH, TALT, and GFSU. It is a total cost of 1.7 million for 2021. If you can also note that it is an intersection improvement, part of the Vision Zero safety project. With this, I think can we move to the next slide? I would like you to approve the TIP amendment, and please recommend it to the board for approval. I will take any questions at this time, but otherwise, thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Shaka. Any questions from the committee? No questions? All right, we have a motion. Jonathan made a motion. We have a second.
Jay Collins, second.
Jay Collins made a second. So there was a motion by Jonathan, second by Jay. Any other discussion? Okay, and so that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Sheldon.
Thank you.
You're up next, Amy?
Yeah. Do you mind if I present from here? Is that okay?
Yeah, you may want to, you can do this. Maybe you could slide over a little closer to the speaker.
Sorry. Why do you pull up my phone again? Thank you.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So my name is Katie. I'm at the City of Tampa. For those who don't know me, I'm the Chief Transportation Planning Engineer. We have this very exciting project that we're going to be presenting today. Chris Vela in the public comments mentioned it today, and he was spot on with where it comes from and why we're excited about this project. So let's go to the next slide. So the initial concept is based on the City of Tampa's envision plan. The City of Tampa has been leading the concept development effort to look at how do we reconnect some of the barriers that were created, especially on actually, so the east-west connectivity, how do we repair that? And so we've been leading the concept development, but FDOT has been an amazing partner to us we didn't have the resources to do craft analysis and get this into design, and so they stepped up and are helping the city to get that done. So what we've done so far is we've done a preliminary traffic and feasibility review, which FDOT has paid for, and the city has been working with FDOT. The city has also been coordinating with FDOT and MPO for funding. We are, as I said, the mobility department, which is the department where I work. We're leading the effort to finalize this vision and the concept. We've also partnered with our economic opportunity department at the city to do private development strategies. So just like I said, there have been some strategic parcels that have been acquired. So looking at opportunities, and like I mentioned, again, like maybe it's affordable housing, transit-oriented development. There's a lot of potential for this area, and this project is really unlock that potential for those parcels. Also, our streetcar will be running alongside this area, so this is right for redevelopment. And then FDOT will ultimately manage the design based on the city's preferred concept. Next slide. So these are, so I'm going to go through some of the existing conditions. As you can see, it's just a lot of spaghetti right now. When you get off, you don't always get that sense of place when you're entering downtown, and if you're trying to traverse between the Arts District, the Strand, the Riverwalk, into the east portion of downtown, it's very difficult to maneuver, especially if you're someone who's walking or biking. So we're trying to remedy that. Next slide. This is what it looks like it is, just a Google Earth snapshot, but you can see it looks more like a highway than it does, one of our city streets. And this is actually the city's own portion right here. Next slide. But nothing about this is inviting for people to walk through. There's currently a parking lot. And so how do we reconfigure this space into a developable while recreating that grid that we need for enhanced mobility? Next slide. Okay, so these are the existing conditions, and this is just an excerpt directly from the city envision plan. And if you want to read more, you can go on to the city of Tampa website and type in envision. And so that was just an excerpt from the envision plan, and it talks about what actually is currently and what it could be. And so this project really stems from that envision plan. As you all know, extensive public engagement went into that, and that's the community vision that's represented in that document. And so that's where this project came from. So currently, we're partnering with FDOT to finalize concepts. We're looking at envisioning a future of Ashley Drive. So what will this project do for Ashley Drive and the surrounding areas, and how can we work with our partners in planning and development and economic development to really see the potential for this portion of downtown. And we're also working with a lot of stakeholders. You'll see some of them listed coming up, but specifically our North Downtown stakeholders. Next slide. Okay, so currently we are also doing the stakeholder outreach. Our consultant, which is Hilton, and then Josh Frank with Wide Open Office, have already engaged with the Downtown River Arts Neighborhood Association. And I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I heard it went very well. They were really excited about the project. And then other stakeholders you can see listed. And if you have any stakeholders you think we should talk to as we're going through this process, please do let me know. But we are excited to develop this concept in collaboration with the community. Next step. So this was just present to let you all know that the process of what we're going to do. We're currently doing community engagement and working on content development before we enter final design. So if you have any questions or comments, you can start them now, or you can reach me anytime offline.
All right, thank you, Danny. Are there any questions? Jay?
Danny, does the city have a timeline yet for when some of the infrastructure would go in and then request for proposals, kind of like with what it did with Water Street and everything else so many years ago?
We're still working on the timeline. It will depend on other adjacent development and construction projects. We are not at the point where we would entertain the, thinking through a schedule of RFPs for design for the roadway portion, and then the economic development portion would follow. So there are a lot of moving pieces between this project and next, the streetcar, and so it's still something we're working to figure out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and I just like to add that this is a priority project that was added to our priority list last year. So we've been coordinating with the city and FDOT to get this project going and moving along.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Mike, this is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, it's Jeff Sims, EPC. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of details on the plan. I guess I'm just asking, I think it's a great idea to kind of reassess that area. There's certainly opportunities. Is there any plans to affect the off-ramp and on-ramp on the 275 as part of the project? I guess I couldn't really get the details from the picture.
Yeah, all we have done so far is a preliminary traffic analysis to see if this project would pass that straight case test to see is this a worthwhile concept to develop, and it is, and we can do it from a traffic analysis standpoint, which would be just really focusing on the east-west connectivity and reintroducing that grid, and then bringing the bridge down to grade a little sooner. So I don't think that there would be meaningful capacity impacts to the ramp, but we are coordinating with FDOT and they could completing the traffic analysis effort.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions? I have a question. I'm presuming you don't have any high-level cost estimates at this point.
No.
At what point would you give just very high level, $1 million, $10 million, whatever, kind of the magnitude stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to estimate that because we would hope to leverage some of the work that would be done with TAC with this project. So it's hard to estimate and understand what the city portion would be or what, could be funded through other means. So we don't have to estimate. Plus, we don't really know the concept yet. We're really depending on community engagement before we fully develop that concept. So we expect to continue that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Danny. Sarah, I don't have the agenda, so.
The next presentation series, yeah, there you go.
The TOD pilot project update?
Yeah.
And who's presenting that?
There we go. Nicole McCleary.
Okay.
Guys, Happy New Year to all. I'm going to be giving you guys an update on the transit-oriented development pilot project that we started last year around this time. It kicked off. So just kind of sharing with you what we've done to date and our future steps. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a project overview, the TOD project is really focused on the future of the communities within the study area. And the study area includes the HART BRT alignment, as well as the City of Tampa's streetcar extension project. So this project will result in recommendations for land use and development, economic development, anti-displacement and affordable housing, neighborhood conservation, as well as multimodal mobility. Next slide, please. So the project is designed to advance 5 goals, and those goals are to encourage a mix of transit supportive uses, protect and improve community character, create safe and walkable and bikeable networks, and ensure context sensitivity, and improve access both locally and regionally. Next slide, please. So we have a great project team. HART is hosting the project, and we are partnering with the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Hillsborough MPO, and the Planning Commission. We also have a working group that is comprised of neighborhood association representatives, property owners, developers, institutes like hospitals, educational institutes, and community organizations. So our consultant team is headed up by HDR, and then we have SB Friedman, Plus Serbia, Street Sense, Playbook, and Vrana Consulting. Next slide, please. So this project is scheduled to be 18 months, and we are currently on track. We are in the first phase, which is, well, we're actually ending the first phase right now, which is we've completed the context assessment and we're doing finalization of that. We will then look at policies and strategies and do some station area planning for the Palm Avenue station. Next slide, please. And this just gives you an idea of our schedule. So as I said, we're just wrapping up the context assessment. Our next step will be looking at policies within Tampa, within the study area, and developing recommendations, bringing that back to our working group, kind of figuring out which ones will work with the county, with the city. So that's going to be an intensive effort, the next phase. And then we'll move on to station area planning and final recommendations and project documentation. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of issues and ideas that, you know, we're trying to pull into this project. We are definitely, we've presented these issues to our working group to get feedback on what they think would help their community or how we can address some of these issues. So when we're talking about issues and ideas that we wanted input on, it was things like ideas for new development and investment, including thoughts about changes in land use and location, scale of new businesses, and opportunities for redevelopment and adaptive reuse. We also asked for input and ideas on neighborhood improvement, housing conservation, and infill development. We're also we've talked a lot about improving mobility within your neighborhood. So when we're talking about that, we're looking for ideas of how to improve walking, biking, and transit access within the study area, but specifically within specific neighborhoods within the study area. We also are looking at ideas to ensure affordability and opportunity for local residents and businesses to ensure that even if prices are rising around them, that they can afford to stay in their home or they can afford to move, but within the same community, things of that nature. Next slide, please. So we developed a TOD working group, and this group was really for information sharing and gathering. It's actually a sounding board for the project team, some of the ideas that we come up with to ensure that they're in line with the community visions. It's a non-formal group, and we meet about every 2 months. We do expect it to ebb and flow with membership, just based on how the word gets out about the project. And as people become more interested, or organizations become more interested in the project, we gladly want their input and feedback. So it is very open. Membership is listed on our website, and also information about upcoming meetings is listed there as well. So currently we've been meeting every 2 months, but that kind of changes depending on what we're doing and what kind of input we're seeking from the group. Next slide, please. And this is a listing of the working group participants. So this was up to date as of November, but as it changes, as we get more requests to become a part of the working group, the website is updated, and this list is also listed on the website. Next slide, please. And so you can find out information about the project and our outreach and engagement efforts on our website, which is gohearttod.org. Next slide, please. So I've given you some background on why we're doing the project, what our goals are. We talked a little bit about the study area, but this provides you with a visual of the study area. So the project focuses on the future of areas within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the corridor. So this is the corridor that's planned for enhancement. As I said, the corridor will run the BRT alignment as well as the extended streetcar service. So it goes from the heart of downtown Tampa, north along Florida Avenue and Tampa Street, east along Linebaugh, north along Nebraska Avenue, and east along Fowler Avenue, and north of 30th Street to USF. So it's quite a large range. So with that, we have developed some micro areas, and we've developed 5 of them. And as we'll go through, we'll talk about the context assessment and how they differ. Next slide, please. Okay, so this kind of gives you another picture of the study area. And as you can see, we have those different neighborhoods, communities listed out that we're focusing on. And really, I wouldn't say that we specifically focused on these areas, but when you look at the study area and the information that we received, they easily showed us that they have very different characteristics, very different needs. When you talk to people, they were looking for very different things within their community. So it was easy to break down the study area into 5 different segments. Next slide, please. So our current work was based on understanding the context. And what we were looking at there was assessing existing conditions, understanding the market dynamics, identifying new opportunities for development, redevelopment, and infill, and then really understanding the goals of the community, how the people in the community saw the future of their community, those businesses, organizations, neighborhood organizations, residents, as well as some institutions. And then we also evaluated the access to transit, because one of the things that we really want to do is provide supportive development that supports transit. So we also evaluated that access. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we look at the study area, we see that there's going to be an increase in jobs. By 2045, it's projected that we'll have a 71% increase in those jobs. By 2045, we expect an 88% increase in the number of residents living in that area. So with that, we know that we have to do some planned growth or growth management. And definitely, I think that the transit-oriented development will definitely help that. Next slide, please. So through our context assessment, we realized that there were about 5 different types of neighborhood characterizations within the study area. So we go from downtown to a traditional Main Street type to a mid-center Main Street, so a neighborhood center type of community, to more auto-oriented communities, and then regional auto-oriented areas. Next slide, please. Okay. So our market profile was done for each of those community areas we identified. And with that, we looked at spatial distribution in some markets. We also looked at performance for rents, owner occupancy, housing, as well as commercial rents, and then occupancy, as well as the demand for housing stock within that area. Our consultants also did one-on-one interviews with large property owners and developers within the area, and they will provide like a high-level summary report of overall themes that they heard from these conversations. Next slide, please. Okay. So just to give you kind of an idea of who lives in the study area. So within our study area, we have just over 52,000 population. And then we have the largest number of population in the USF Fowler area at 29%. Our population density within the study area is much greater than throughout Hillsborough County. So just gives you an idea of what's going on within the study area and how this can support transit-oriented development. Next slide, please. Some of our sub-area demographic profile, we know that we have a very diverse population. We have Tampa Heights with the greatest diversity, the greatest minority population. And then we have income within the study area medium income ranging from 23,000 to just over 53,000. So there's a broad range there. Next slide, please. So what did the context assessment and marketing profile tell us? Well, it kind of told us that we had 3 different markets within the study area. We had a weaker market that has limited private investment and may not really be ready for the private investment. So we have to determine how we can make them ready. We have an emerging market where there is some investment occurring already, but there could be things done that would increase that private investment or, make it more alluring. And then we have a stronger market where you really don't have to do much to get people investing in the area. And we want to continue to see that investment and growth in those areas. Okay. Sorry, guys, my computer just shut down on me. Okay, there we go. All right, next slide, please. Okay. So this is just kind of a matrix to show our sub-market potential. So you can see that downtown generally has the greatest TOD potential right now, while USF, the Fowler area, and the Florida and Nebraska have some of the greatest challenges. This will help us to determine what kind of recommendations that we can make for each of these areas. Next slide, please. And so with the context assessment pretty much completed, we're now looking at code evaluation to assess what codes within each neighborhood are TOD friendly and determine how we can make those areas that don't have codes that are TOD friendly more TOD friendly. We will definitely be diving into this with the city, the county, the MPO to really create some good recommendations that are implementable, and really they'll be working with other departments to ensure that these are things that can actually happen. So that's kind of our next step. Next slide, please. Okay. So we have a few next steps on here. So we are completing at the last of the listening sessions, which were direct kind of one-on-one sessions with our consultant team and property owners and developers that are working within the area. We're finalizing our context report. A summary of the report will be available on the website, as well as the full report. But some people just like the high-level summary, so we're going to pull that together and also provide the more detailed report as well. We will have an affordable housing workshop where we present some policy recommendations to the group, and then kind of flesh them out with the group and see what their feelings are, whether they're supporting them and if they think they'll work, things like that. And then we will begin winter spring engagement with the public. So we haven't had a lot of engagement with the public as of yet due to COVID, and then also just really kicking off the project. So we were working more with organizations, businesses, institutions, but we'll now begin to really bring the public in, let them know what's going on, get their feedback and interest. And then policy development. We will work with the partners of the project to really develop some strong policies that can guide the future of these communities. So I guess with that, I will take any comments or questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I have comments.
Danny?
I just want to thank Tod and their consultant team. This is a high priority project for the city. It really supports our mayor in transforming Campus Tomorrow vision, our history, and Nicole and the rest of our team and HR, they've been incredible partners, and we're really excited about this project and something really.
Well, thank you. We're excited about it too. I mean, I think this can be so great for Tampa, and we're hoping that we get to the recommendation phase, and I've heard there's some grants available to maybe do a part 2 implementation phase, and I think that would be great.
All right, any other comments? Yes.
Question. Hi, Nicole. My name is Matt Flood, and I'm with the Hillsborough County School System. And I had a couple of quick questions. There's a map that you kind of shown a couple of different times showing the alignment of the BRT system. Has some points along the line. I'm wondering if those are those station locations that you guys have identified as part of the study, or just kind of nailed down, or is that part of your process?
So I'm not sure if I heard all of your question, but I know it was about the stops for the arterial. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so most of the stops are nailed down. There are a few that may be changed or moved slightly based on some of the other projects that we've heard about, we know that's going on. So I would say like 80% of those are nailed down.
Another question, you mentioned the USF and Fowler area and Nebraska and Florida corridors had some of the greatest challenges. What are those challenges?
So those challenges are that, first of all, there's not a lot of housing stock available in those areas. There's not a lot of commercial development or areas where there could be new commercial development that they noticed. Some of it is pricing of the area to make it more attractive for businesses to go into those areas. So those are a few of the things that make it a little more difficult.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you, Nicole.
All right, thanks, guys.
Agenda, but what's up next, Sarah?
Yeah, our final item was the old business that Jeff had requested regarding the air quality presentations that we had last month in our joint CAC meeting.
I think Jeff wanted to speak to that one. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, I can speak to it briefly. As hopefully most people were present, we had a presentation done as a joint presentation by EPC and USF. It was focused on air quality, health effects from transportation, also some of the densities and along the heavily traveled roadways, along with some of the inequities and mitigation techniques that would be recommended for MPO to consider. This same presentation was given to EPC back in August, and two Hillsborough County commissioners that sit on that board also sit on the MPO board, and they requested that we facilitate this presentation getting to the MPO board. So that effort back in December was for it to go through committee. And at this point, what we're hoping for is a motion to have that air quality presentation from the December TAC meeting be presented to the MPO board in the near future. I cannot make that motion, but I would, humbly ask that one of the committee members make it along with the second, so we can kind of take care of that housekeeping. And any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Anybody have any questions for Jeff? And I guess we have a motion.
Well, I think, Jeff, since you're not the acting chair, couldn't you make the motion?
Well,
I don't think I can because Michelle is the official EPC representative, because I couldn't be part of the quorum. So
Sorry.
someone else needs to make the motion to have that presentation be made to the MPO board.
Michelle was starting to make the motion, I think.
I'd like to formally make the motion to have the air quality presentation that was previously presented by EPC and USF be forwarded and presented to the MPO board.
So we have a motion from Michelle. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's second by Danny. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. With your official request,
Thank you.
have this presented to the full MPO. Yeah, I don't have the agenda, Sarah. Any other items on the agenda for today?
Nope, that was the last bit on the agenda today.
Okay, is there any other new business by any of the members? Okay, seeing none, I'll have a gavel, but this for adjourned.
If everybody that's in the room, if you can just wipe down your computer with the wipes provided, and then you can leave it on.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
I agree.